Hair. You know when you cry looking at other artists' drawings? That's how I felt looking at this and that. Until one day, drawing hair just clicked. So in this video, let me see if I can make drawing hair click for you. First, we have to have a change of mindset. If you're like me and wonder why the more I try to render, the worse it looks, you're doing it wrong. If you're following every tutorial and overdoing the amount of strands or over-rendering, that's perfectionism speaking. But here's what you have to remember. You have to find the balance. Especially if you have a semi-realistic or anime type style, like me, remember that you're drawing off real life. Artists only enhance what we see in the real world because we can create much more easily. Okay, take this sketch I did for example. Here's my base for the hair, just some shapes, simple bangs, front strands, back, some lines. Now, if I just give it a few extra strands, add some flow, pretend there's a bit of wind maybe, boom. It's not perfect, it's very sketch-like, and I don't do line art. I just keep sketches and I color over it. Now let me introduce the very simple foundation of drawing hair, which are shapes. So if you binge art videos, which I very much recommend, you probably have seen those Pinterest tutorials on drawing hair. And if you're not using Pinterest as an art tool, what are you doing with your life? Block out the shape of the hair you want. So don't go over the top, don't add thousands of strands, don't start rendering immediately, just put the bangs you want, overall shape, and then front and back hair, just a few lines to show the flow of the hair. Then you can start adding more details. Start differentiating the hair strands, but not too much. Too much is wrong. And if you're still struggling, thinking about keeping large blocks of hair and fewer strands definitely help. But of course, if you're going for a very detailed hair art style, who am I to stop you? But remember, go from big to small. Start out with the large shapes before going crazy, especially since you can zero in on a small area, then zoom out and realize it looks really bad. Also, that's why a lot of artists never zoom in until the end of rendering, which I like to do. I also draw with my fingers, So I ran into the weirdest issue making this video. I was trying to give examples on how too many strands in your hair can lead to it looking bad. However, it actually started looking fine. So I deduced that my line confidence and practice with drawing hair was making it flow really well even with the extra strands. So after thinking about this and drawing for a little bit more, I came up with 2 things you should definitely look out for in drawing hair. Now, I'm not saying forget everything I just said in this video. I'm saying that these are the 2 things I found that don't work well in most art styles. Especially in anime, you'll see a lot of examples of hair being very detailed or basically not shaded at all, or shaded very, let's say, not based on real life. But here are 2 things I found that definitely don't work well, especially I see this in beginner artists, is 1, don't put lines in the middle of your hair. If you want to indicate hair flow, try to use strands on the outside that aren't going in or apart. They're just there to show, oh, the hair is moving in this direction and it's following the curvature. Next, try not to make the flow clash. So in my case, a lot of hair strands can look really good even if they splay out to the side or whatever, but mainly think about how references and hair in real life works. So if you have a lot of strands that are clashing with each other and doesn't seem to flow very well, check out references because this is a really big issue with people who have a lot of strands. Contrary to those who are adding lines in the middle of their hair trying to give it flow. So these are the 2 points I really want to reiterate. Especially as a beginner, you should learn the basics before starting to stylize. And watching my video mainly is just to give you tips on how to accelerate that without learning, let's say, realistic hair, because a lot of people start with realism, then move into stylization. So a lot of these videos are just here to allow you to skip that path before learning every single muscle and anatomy and just skip to building bases or building bases for hair and how it works in real life without actually painting it realistically before you move on to stylization. I can't tell you a specific way to draw hair types, but for me, since my style is very based on flowy, sketchy lines and I don't do much line art, I mainly just go for it. I scribble a lot, and then coloring is what pulls it through in the end. But if you're talking about like wavy hair, straight hair, then here are a few examples of how I would do that. Mainly, it's the frizzy, fuzzy, and super curly hair where I just go crazy and sketch a lot. So mainly what I would do is search up references, add some lighting, as lighting really pulls it through. Even though we're not talking about coloring in this video, still think about lighting. I'm going to draw something in grayscale just to show you how lighting can convey hair types, but otherwise just follow references. Real life and references should always be your go-to when you want to draw something, even if it's super stylized. Otherwise, you can always just go to artists who you know and love and want to learn from their art styles. Now, after keeping a hair ratio in mind of more larger blocks of hair and then much less smaller strands, you can add volume to your hair. I also like to draw my hair like ribbons. It makes it really cool when it's wavy, and I add a few split strands occasionally, but usually I just have strands going with the flow. So for my grayscale drawing, the first thing I did was lay down a base color and then went in with some light shading according to my light source. Now the next thing I did was add some midtones to help with the volume, but then I realized since there was no saturation in this monochromatic drawing that I'd go in with some like pure black and pure white, just to show how volume is affected by you coloring and shading. So I really hope that this example is going to help with how the shapes and flow and volume is affected by monochromatic shading. Lastly, you need to practice drawing hair. Now, I can already hear you. Oh, Dev, I know that, but the important thing is knowing what to practice and how to practice. So first thing is to practice your lines. Try to get nice and flowy lines, not all in one piece or chicken scratch, but long and flowy. So this will help the look of your sketches or line art and give you a nice base so the hair is dynamic. And it might be a little bit weird asking you to lose your freaking perfectionism in practicing lines, but the main reason why you get better over time and not immediately after watching 5 hours of art talk is your confidence in drawing and learning to recognize what looks good and bad. Anyways, I really hope this helped. If you're looking for how to color hair, just go learn color theory and lighting. Trust me, that's literally the secret to coloring hair.